How's it going, everybody? I am ZBilbs, and I'm back here today with another metal albums ranked video. Today, I'm going over yet again another power metal band, and that is Orden Ogan. Now, I was just surfing through Spotify one day, and their new album popped into my feed, and I'd heard of these guys, and I listened to it, and basically after one track, I was hooked on this band. I was sold. I was like, I'm going all the way through this, and I did, and it's quickly become one of my favorite power metal bands. Overall, this is just my favorite style of power metal. My two favorite power metal bands is Sabaton and Powerwolf. The new kind of modern style of like a nice like gravelly baritone voice and then these epic anthemic choruses is just my favorite type of power metal, and that is exactly what Orden Ogan is. So it is an absolute treat to be able to go through this. I wish they had even more albums already, but hopefully they'll have much more to come. Yeah, without further ado, I mean, they've only got 7 albums, but already spoilers, but they're all good. There's no filler, there's no bad albums on here. But yeah, something had to come in last place, sadly, and that is going to be at 7, their first album, Veil. And this was incredibly close with this next one. There's a lot of albums that are close on here. But honestly, what it came to, why this is in last place, it just, I don't know, it doesn't have the style of Orden Ogan that I think doesn't come until, I'd say, kind of to the end in Ravenhead, the more like big, anthemic, powerful style. There's definitely a lot of glimpses in this one in Easton Hope of that, and there's a lot of good stuff. It's just not my favorite stuff of Orden Ogan, if that makes any sense. And there's still a lot of good songs in here. A lot of times I judge bands on like how consistent their albums are in quality, and honestly, I don't have to say that for basically any Orden Ogan albums, because almost every song of basically every Orden Ogan album is a good song. I will say in the first 3 albums, there's a handful of skips that I have from those albums, but that's really it. So in this album, there's a few songs that I don't particularly like, but everything else I think is decent. So I'm only going to go over like my top favorites from this album, and that would be probably my favorite is Winds of Veil. Is great. I also love Reality Lost, and what is it? This is also really good. But basically everything else is decent. Just once again, I guess not as top tier as some stuff to come, and not quite my favorite style of Orden Ogan, but a good album in its own right. Like this next album, at number 6, I have Easton Hope. This, I would say, it's basically on par with Veil. What it came down to, why this one I gave the edge over Veil, is my favorite song from this album I like more than my favorite song from Veil. That is Nobody Leaves. That's one of my favorite Orden Ogan songs overall. It's probably, no, not of the early stuff. There's one on the 3rd album I like more, but it's between the 2 albums. It's the best. And there's some other really good ones too. One of their most famous songs is from this album, We're Pirates. That one, I don't like it as much as most people. It's a little, it has this weird kind of like, I don't know, techno style to it that's a little off-putting for me. It's a little bit too long for what should be a fun short jig, but it's still, like, I can't deny it's still incredibly catchy, incredibly fun. Some other good ones on here. The title track, Easton Hope, is good. All These Dark Years, it's probably my 3rd favorite on this album. And once again, consistent in its quality. Not really any skippable tracks in here. I mean, 1 or 2, but it's a good album. Not quite my favorite style of Orden Ogan, but really good. And so that's what's coming in at number 6. Moving on to number 5, I already alluded to this already, but the first 3 albums are my least favorite of Orden Ogan. So at number 5, I have To the End, their 3rd album. This one, I think, I think the middle three Orden Ogan albums tend to be people's favorite because that's when, like, most people think that's when their style came most to fruition. I would say sort of. I don't think it's until Ravenhead where they really nail their style, but I can see why people love this album a ton. And this one has finally got one of my favorite Orden Ogan songs. The Things We Believe In is so good, so catchy and fun. I also love To the End is really good. This World of Ice is solid. Other decent ones, Land of the Dead, Take This Light. So once again, really solid album. I don't think it quite has my favorite style of Orden Ogan that gets ushered in with later albums. And it's only got, I'd say, like one, maybe two top tier songs, and there is a handful of stuff kind of like in the late middle of the album that I think is, I don't know, kind of fillerish. So that's why I would say it's a step up above the first two, I think, because we're getting closer to that style of Orden Ogan that I love the most, but it still doesn't quite have the consistency in the songwriting that I would put it any higher than 5, but I do get why people list this as one of their favorites. And it is decently heavy too. That's one thing the newest two albums have. The middle three are probably the heaviest, whereas the newer two are less so, but that matters a little bit less to me. I think they're all heavy enough for me. But yeah, that is To the End at 5. All right, moving on to number 4. This is where it got so unbelievably hard. Basically, all of these next 4 are essentially, like, in my rating system, like 1 point off of each other. Yeah, because I would say the first 2 albums are, like, right there. They're both solid, but they're near the bottom. And then there's a jump in quality to the third one. And then there's another big jump in quality going into albums. And then it's like all the last 4 are just right there next to each other. So it was hard to place these because I think they all have the quality of Orden Ogan, or the style that I like the most, and they're all absolutely excellent albums. There's no bad Orden Ogan. But at number 4, I had to go with Ravenhead. So there's not a single bad song on this album. It all just came down to how good were my favorite ones, how many of the top tier songs did it have, and just not quite enough as other Orden Ogan albums. My favorites on here, Ravenhead and Fever. Evil Lies in Every Man is solid. It's a little weird with that intro, but I like it. Probably my favorite on the album is Sorrow Is Your Tale. I love the Joachim Cans feature on there. Too Soon is also really good. So, man, there's not really anything wrong with this album. I like songs like A Reason to Give and Deaf Among the Blind, but I think they're not quite as strong as the rest. So good stuff. I just think other albums have higher of highs. But yeah, that's Ravenhead at number 4. Moving on to number 3, I have got Gunman. Another really, really hard one to place. Once again, every single song on here was good. It's just like how many top tier songs did it have, and it was less than the coming 2 albums. Obviously, the song Gunman is one of the best Orden Ogan songs. It's definitely in my top 5. Other great ones are Vampire in Ghost Town, Ashen Rain, One Last Chance. So I'd say this one tends to be a lot of people's favorite. Other than those ones I just listed, I don't think and maybe Forlorn and Forsaken, that was pretty freaking good. I don't think there's as many really top tier songs. Like songs like, say, Down Here, Fields of Sorrow, The Face of Silence, those are all good songs. I enjoy all of those songs, but none of those are particularly stand out or memorable where I would want to come back and listen to them a lot of times. So I understand why people love this album. It's definitely got the heavy, iconic Orden Ogan style, just not quite my favorite. Moving on to number 2, I have got Final Days. This is probably a controversial pick because this one, apparently people think it's less heavy than Ravenhead and Gunman. maybe I see that. I don't get it. I'm more to, as long as there's like fun, catchy, anthemic choruses and decent, cool, memorable riffs and instrumentations, I'm all for it. And I thought this album knocked it out of the park. There's definitely some weird stuff. I know they're kind of going for a futuristic vibe, but they go a little bit too much on some of the songs. I think Heart of the Android, I still really like the song, but some of the stuff they do in that one is a little weird. Other than that, though, like there's just kind of banger after banger on here. In the Dawn of the AI is spectacular. I love Interstellar. The Gus G feature is excellent. Black Hole is excellent. Absolution for Our Final Days. Hollow is excellent. All the other there's other good ones. Inferno, Let the Fire Rain. Um, what is there to say? There's just a ton of just catchy, fun, interesting stuff on here. And the only reason it's not number one is number one has probably all of my top three favorite songs are all probably in the number one pick. But Final Days, I think it's a little slept on. I think it's a good album, and that's coming in at number two. Moving on to number one, uh, this happens to me so much, but it's happening again today because their most recent album, that being The Order of Fear, is my number one pick. This has happened to me for like the last four bands I've ranked where their most recent album winds up being my favorite, but I don't know. I guess I'm biased or something, but honestly, I think this is an absolutely spectacular album. I will not be surprised if this ends up being my favorite album of the year, or at least up there, like in the top five, because this has got some absolutely spectacular songs. My favorite on the album is the title track, The Order of Fear. Already has become one of my favorite power metal songs of all time. It is just so fun and just electric and catchy and it's just freaking badass. I love it. And then there's some others that are also like spectacular. I love Kings of the Underworld. Conquest is amazing. Prince of Sorrow is amazing. I love the long closer in The Long Darkness. And then there's some other really good ones too, like Blind Man, like Dreadlord. I think I already said Prince of Sorrow, Anthem to the Dark Side. There's one song on this album that I don't love, and I think most people like it. I don't love Moonfire. I think the chorus is a little too repetitive. So, but even with one skip track and the previous three albums, there's not a single skip song on Final Days, Ravenhead, or Gunman. That just shows you how much I love the best songs in this album, that they can compensate for one song being not so good, at least for me. So, I mean, that's, even my mini review. Oh yeah, My Worst Enemy. I think that's a decent song too. But yeah, the Order of Fear, spectacular album. I've seen for some reason it's getting lower ratings, that and Final Days, than the other Orden Ogan stuff. I don't understand why. I think it's a freaking masterpiece, but let me know in the comments what you guys think. But that is my list of the 7 Orden Ogan albums ranked. Let me know in the comments, what did you think? How wrong was I? And how would you rank the Orden Ogan albums? So let me know what metal bands would you like to see me do rankings for in the future. What other power metal have I missed out on that I should tackle next? But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you later.